You don't seem sold.
Well,
This agenda should be pretty short from what
I get a kick out of their talk. I mean, I wish I don't have an Instagram account, so
Wait, Judy dropped off officially.
oh, come and
right?
enjoy the blah, 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 blah. Something like that. Just give me good food.
That makes sense.
Totally. Would be awesome.
You have access to your presentation.
Right.
Yes, I will.
Oh,
I
here we
made
go.
chicken, what's it called?
Oh, no, we have one more minute.
I don't know what it was called last night with apricots.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Good, huh?
Got us pushing close. Do we have Kenny online yet?
Penny's online?
I think we got everybody online that we're expecting.
Okay,
We do need to start the broadcast, though.
okay.
What are you trying to get into?
I haven't signed into this desktop yet, so
Not letting us pull up PowerPoint?
just give me 1 sec.
Gotcha. Yeah, give us just a moment
Okay.
here. I know it's a rarity that we have technical difficulties.
Yeah, never happens.
Fucking kill me. What is the app called again? Authenticator.
It's a 12-step authentication process.
Really great.
I have December
We know.
10th.
Really?
There you go. You just
Okay.
got it.
Right? Okay, right. December 10th? Oh, where did I get on this one?
We are.
Must have been something that was in there.
I don't know, are we? It's not
Yeah,
working.
we'll see. Oh,
Nope.
it figures.
Yes. It might work anyway. Let me see.
December 10th, right.
Okay, it looks like it's gonna work.
Oh.
Okay, ready to start broadcast?
Awesome.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
I think we're good.
All right, go ahead and call this planning commission meeting to order. Roll call.
Perfect. Filet.
Here.
Bomer.
Here.
Kreibel.
Here.
Dockery. Not here. Derwingson.
Here.
Bush.
Here.
Layton. Not
Here.
He's online. He's online. Riggs.
Online, yeah.
Salty.
Here.
Barris.
Here.
Almquist. Here. Wasant is not here. She's online. Wasant is online. Hodges.
Here.
And Armstrong is here.
All right, we have minutes to approve from the December 10th, 2024 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from December 10th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from December 10th, 2024. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Any unscheduled citizens? Anybody here to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Anybody online? No. Any amendments to this agenda?
No.
All right, then we'll go ahead and open the public hearing we have for this evening, the request for a minor subdivision replat. Take it away.
Okay. So, Ben Kahn, who's here, is hoping to replat his lot, which sits, if you want to go to the next slide. At 223 West 3rd Street. Originally it was originally it was 2 lots, and then a previous replatted it as a single lot. And now Ben is seeking to reestablish the original platting and replat it as 2 separate lots and 2 separate units again. And so that was the original plat. That was done in some time ago.
2007, I think it was.
2007.
2007, looks like. And then it was turned into, if you go to the next slide, this. So this is now what it currently sits at. Current plating shows one large plat with 2 units on it. Observations we made, it was originally presented to us, maybe trying not to go through this process as, this replatting, as the applicant stated in a memorandum to us, that it was a material misrepresentation of the property, and it kind of wasn't done how it was supposed to be. And so we looked at it, and since this was a recorded and approved plat, the need for this process is valid in creating a minor subdivision again and replatting it as 2 separate lots. Going through the review standards, since in the C2 zone district, no dimensional standards to speak of other than building height. These are existing older buildings. But as far as lot dimension size, setbacks, any of those things, there aren't any dimensional standards for that. So this meets the criteria for it. It's on an existing old street. Utilities, so it does have separate utilities for each unit. So there was a little bit of confusion with our staff and maybe with the applicant in the past when they spoke to a different staff member, but it does have and has currently been billed for quite some time with separate water and sewer for each property. Xcel Energy had some conditions for approval that I'll talk about. No phases, natural features, floodplains, noise reduction, future streets, none of that's impacted. Since it's less than 5 units, payment fee in lieu of open space will be required for any new units created. There's existing units there, so it doesn't really apply for this. Common recreation facilities doesn't apply, lots and blocks, architecture doesn't apply. Codes, only one that was potentially brought up by the building department was fire and safety. So because of the proximity of the buildings to one another, they're very close. They're definitely within 10 feet. You would typically need firewall created, but because they're existing buildings, Chad, building official said, Chad Chadwick, said that it's basically existing non-conforming and that that's not a requirement he would necessarily impose. The question was brought up, more of a recommendation by him, and then the city staff had decided around potential drainage issues because the buildings are so close and the roofs kind of drain right into each other's foundations. It was recommended by Chad, so not a requirement, to put gutters or to do some sort of mitigation for that. The city has stated that as more of a public safety and right thing, so the city is requiring that they do some sort of mitigation on that front, and that be a plat note for it. And then inclusionary, so agency comments for it. David Lady stated that public services are required for each. He has that, so that's been met. We also talked to him about sidewalk fee in lieu. Because it's existing sidewalks, they haven't required that in the past. If it's on a street or adjacent to the property, there's sidewalks done. Typically in a minor subdivision, that's a component we require, is that a fee in lieu be paid that goes towards that general fund, but the Public Works Director isn't requiring it. Xcel Energy stated that they do have some concern with the lot split, just in regards to required easements and relocating electric service lines if it's necessary. So the applicant has to submit basically an application to them in order to begin either establishing an easement or relocating a line. We haven't been told if that's necessary or not. They just said as a condition of the plat, or if something is done, that they should contact Xcel Energy to ensure that neither of those conditions need to be met. So they basically said they just need to reach out to Xcel Energy to make sure if something is being done, that there's an appropriate easement that's been dedicated. And then school fees, no, that's standard. So our recommended findings, it complies with the comprehensive plan and proposed subdivision shall carry out the purpose and spirit of the comprehensive plan and conform to all applicable objectives, guiding principles. They've complied with the review standards for the subdivision, so they've met all the standards required. Required action by the commission, confirm that adequate public notice was provided and the fees paid. We're conducting the public hearing and make sure findings regarding the proposed use ensure that it's consistent with comp plan, land use code, and appropriate to its location and compatible with neighborhood uses. All of that's the case. And so we are recommending that,
The plat.
yes, yep. There's a few plat notes that will need to be added prior to recording, and in general, there was a little confusion on our end, which I apologize for. We had these draft plats, and I was confused about if these would suffice in review, and then a actual draft be completed by a surveyor following approval or denial of this meeting. And so typically we would have an official approved draft for this, so we don't as of yet. And so based on that, based on what they're trying to do, the Planning Commission has basically three options. You can deny it, you can approve it, and then with the condition of yes, if it's approved, that plat is then reviewed by staff and recorded appropriately. Or it can be continued to the next Planning Commission meeting once the applicant has had time to actually produce a draft plat that contains all of the appropriate notes, designations, locations, where the specific lines are, connections to buildings, all that stuff that's required on any plat. So kind of up to the Planning Commission to decide kind of which route to go on that. But with that, we have a number of notes that are going to be required in that situation anyways, regarding requirement for utility easements, fair contributions to public schools for any new residences that are created in the future, IH fees for any new units that are created, and then that they'll confirm with Xcel Energy for any necessary relocating or easements to create on that front. And then as well as the drainage issue that I brought up earlier. So that'll be a plat note as well. And that we will also be reviewing said plat and redlining and make sure it meets all the standards prior to getting it recorded. And I believe now it is,
We're gonna go to the other conditions, that you didn't already mention, and then also the sewer and utility, sewer and water easement, if that was it.
okay, I think that's the only one left. So the final thing from David Lady, Public Works Director, is just confirming the location of the sewer lines and water lines, and if they're crossing either of the properties, that they have appropriate easement and the size of the easement is conducive to actually being able to work on the lines. So kind of remains to be seen, but that would be an additional condition that we would add. That's it. Any questions?
That's it? All right, questions for staff?
I just have a question. So the things you just mentioned, the utility easements and other notes and things, that would normally appear on a subdivision plat during this process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Question on the sidewalk. I mean, there's a sidewalk there now. Is the issue, is the sidewalk, is it wide enough?
No, sidewalk is fine. It's just more, typically with a subdivision, especially with new construction or in parts of the city where there isn't currently sidewalks, there's a fee in lieu that's required.
Right.
And so because they got existing ones, the Public Works Director said
He waived.
he would waive it.
It's waived.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Any other questions? As of yet?
Could you just explain the electrical, the comment from XL?
More of a covering them comment is more of a broad statement for any development activity. They want to know about it and approve what's being changed or done. As it stands, I would suspect that they're fine with this. It's if the electrical lines are crossing the neighboring property, or if, whenever they see new land use development or ask for agency comment, it's pretty much a generic response of contact us before you do anything, and we need to approve or establish an easement or do relocating of lines if what you're doing might encroach or we might have an issue with it.
Again,
Yeah.
would that not appear on a subdivision plat?
That
Whether the
typically,
lines were crossing the property or whatever as it exists today?
correct, it would. If you want to go back to the original plat.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at too. You can see the,
Let's get the next one back.
um,
So this one,
Zoom in on that,
if we can
actually.
zoom.
Appears. I mean, what I don't understand is, XL Energy, this doesn't appear to be a generic comment. When they say, "It appears this minor subdivision has placed the electrical service line in trespass, which needs to be resolved either by an easement or relocating the line." That doesn't sound to me like just, a generic worry. It sounds like, according to XL, there is currently something wrong. Am I misreading that?
no, but I think we can get into that in discussion and perhaps the applicant will have something to say.
Yeah. And then my question would be, so their easement must be different than Atmos's
They have no
easement, because Atmos has no concern.
Correct, yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Any other,
I have a question if I can
go ahead, Kenny.
ask
We
it.
hear you.
Speak.
I am on page 28 of this presentation. It looks like what I'm assume is the proposed 2 new lots, in red and yellow. Am I on the right spot there that that's the future proposed lot split?
Yes,
Currently, it looks like the sewer crosses over the neighbor's property and then comes into what is the current residence? Am I following that?
This is page 20.
Yeah, there we go. Right. The other one to your right.
Oh, this?
That, yes. Is that the current sewer line?
I don't think so.
That was the
I
electrical.
think-
That's
I
electric.
think that's overhead electric.
It's electric, and then it goes from the house, from there to the other side, yeah, to the other.
Okay. Okay, my question was gonna be if there was an easement in place for that sewer, but if that's electric, I misread that. Sorry about that.
Okay,
That might actually show it a bit better if we can zoom in on it.
Yeah, that's electric.
Not sure where the sewer.
Where's the trespass?
This is S right there.
Yeah, that's the sewer line.
There's some here too, looks like.
what are you guys trying to
Well, we're
find over
trying to
there?
identify where the sewer lines are coming into each of the units on the lots. via this,
See it further down.
the previous ISP there, or the previous plat, actually.
But what, I mean, just to be clear, we can grant a conditional approval like a sewer line and electrical line and water line are identified to the public work director's satisfaction. Can that be, seems straightforward.
Yes, you can condition something
Am I
along
off
those
base there,
lines.
being like this?
Nope, you're correct. I think, yeah. Any other questions for staff? I think we can move on to the applicant. He may have some clarifying comments. Mr. Khan, would you like to come on up and speak into the mic, and perhaps you can enlighten us on some of this?
Sure. I feel like this is kind of like an undoing the knot exercise because it's confusing when you look at it at first glance. Basically, what's happened with this property is it was two lots that had two distinct homes that were built in 1905. And at some point around the time of the Welch subdivision, there was a movement to consolidate those two lots into one lot. And in order to do that, what the applicant did is misrepresent on the survey that the two houses were one house. Okay, because if they were two houses, he would have a problem with access to the alley that he'd have to solve with an easement. So that sounds kind of outlandish, but the way it was done was these two brick homes were literally grafted together. So in the space separating them, a piece of gypsum board was put up, and then they were stuccoed around the entire thing with one of the front doors removed. You couldn't get from one house to the other, so they built a walkway in the back that was like a breezeway that you could use to get from one house to the other. We can speculate as to why he might have done this, but I think the obvious answer is that he wanted to sell off a portion of that one lot that was on the alley to the Honey people who were at the time the garage, and also change the boundaries of the third identical house, which he then sold out. And for folks who've been around Salida for a while, this was the Luigi's, the Italian restaurant. This was Luigi's family. So when I bought the property, I knew that it was two houses that had been grafted together, and my goal was quite different from a typical developer here in Salida. I wasn't interested in maximizing the amount of build out on the space or building condos or going up or any of that stuff. My sole objective was to take this bastardized property and restore it to its original historic footprints without any expansion of the footprints of the two buildings. I left them exactly the way they were. So what we're doing now is kind of the back-end administrative part of that. The initial part of the project involved demo, which I did in conjunction with the county, but it was basically removing the stucco off the two buildings, and then taking all the finish off of the inside, which was pretty rough. The woman who lived there had gone into dementia and lived there with some animals and stuff. Once I completed the finish work, it was time to do the systems. The systems were all done in conjunction with the county and under permit. So that was roof, electric, plumbing. I think HVAC was part of plumbing. And we already had separate city septic and city water with two water taps because it had originally been two houses. But what they had, the electric was really screwed up. It was coming into one house and basically connected to the other house through a series of like extension cords, and grafted stuff and everything. So did a complete electric redo. As part of that, this was done knowing that these would eventually be two units. So it's two separate electrical services with Excel. And what they do is they run along that. Can you pull up maybe the red and Yeah, that one. So if you see the back wall, that's kind of a darker black that's adjacent to the Honey folks. Right along there where I have that proposed easement is where the electrical lines run. So they both run right along that boundary. Then for the yellow one, they just keep going right to that building. And for the red one, they jog over to the left. So when you talk about easements, so there's two separate services, and there's no crisscrossing going on with this yellow unit in terms of the red unit. It's running right along the line from the alley to where the corner of the yellow is. When you talk about easements, there's two different things there. So the first thing is, how do you solve the dilemma of yellow house has electric line running to alley, but also how does yellow house get to alley for trash and other things? So the way that's solved is an actual easement is created. That's an easement between property owners, which I've created because I am able to do that kind of thing. So the easement is basically 3 or 4 feet in between those two units, going all the way from the alley all the way to the front of the property. That covers the electrical line. So the access and utility easement that I've drafted covers any utility access easement or electrical easement issues between the two property owners that might occur. And that'll be recorded and finalized in conjunction with the city staff. But for example, you can't put the cart before the horse. If it's an easement between 223 and 225 West 3rd Street, you don't want to record the easement to say Unit A and Unit B of 223 West 3rd Street. So we couldn't really finalize that or record it without final staff input in this decision. So we always anticipated this would be conditioned on a couple of things, one of them being the finalizing of the access and utility easement that I've drafted. The XL easement is a separate issue. XL needs easements in order to access properties with electrical service. And what they currently have is an easement that covers 223 West 3rd Street. And it has a Unit A and a Unit B, and that's what the easement is recorded as. If two lots are created, they need to have a proper easement for 225 West 3rd Street. It wouldn't exist on paper. So that's what they mean. It's a formal process. It's just paper pushing. They'll put together that and record it. So that addresses the electric. We ran the gas lines down the same trench, so the gas lines are also encompassed in the access and utility easement, separately billed, separately metered to the two units. So at the end of the day, we're just taking these two units that were two lots and that were two addresses and that were two buildings and that had been smushed together, into one ball, and we're separating them again with an appropriate access and utility easement to suit the lot configuration. But there's no development plan here. There's no actual minor subdivision that's going to occur. There's no building permit that will be issued. There's no construction that will occur of any kind. I don't plan on selling either of these lots. Any other questions you folks might have?
Any questions?
I do. I actually have a question regarding the location of the sewer lines. Where does the sewer line running to the unit outlined in yellow, where does that come from?
Where does it come?
Well, I mean, what is the route? I can't quite.
Oh, where's the
Yeah,
route?
on
Okay,
the
that
what's
question
been
I can
provided.
answer. So if you're looking at that yellow, the back left corner, I guess.
You could point on this.
You can take the microphone with you. You can pick it up and take it with you.
I've been told that I'm up. Right about there is where the bathroom is, and that's where the line goes. And I don't know,
How does it connect to the alley is my question.
I don't know that question.
Okay. My point being that through the minor subdivision process, you're going to be creating two separate lots, and so we'll probably want to make sure that there's an easement, maintenance and access easement to the benefit of the units in yellow across the property in red, assuming that's where the sewer is coming from. Generally, it comes from the alley here in Salida.
Yeah, so I drafted the access and utility easement, and if you go back a slide, you can get, there should be one other. No, keep going. Is there one other image you guys have that I submitted? You should.
I think those are it.
So, on this map, it's a little hard to see because I shaded it in with a highlighter, but this is a different draft than the prior one. So if you go back one, you will see there's no easement indicated on this picture. This is just as is currently. And we go to the next one. This is actually a redraft as part of this process. And this dotted line right here on this side, and then on this side, going right to the corner there, is the easement, the proposed easement. So
That's the 3-foot wide.
Excuse me, point of order. The YouTube people cannot hear you
Yeah,
without
could you
speaking
just
into the
grab the
microphone.
We just need you to
Yeah.
hold the mic.
Just
Thank
yeah.
you.
literally
You
pick it
can
up
literally
and-
take it
and
with
speak.
you.
Okay,
Thank
sorry.
you.
It feels a little weird. So just let me restate that for the public record, just so it's clear. On the prior map, prior plat, which shows the improvements as they sit today, there's no easement indicated on that plat because it's recorded and the easement doesn't exist yet. On this plat, which is the updated one in anticipation of this hearing and what we need to do next, the easement is actually drawn out. It's with these dotted lines. It goes right to that corner, and then it goes from this, where there's a gate, right to there, and it kind of narrows. In answer to your question, it narrows a bit where the space between the houses narrows, but it's basically wide enough so you could push the trash receptacle comfortably to the alley, and wide enough to cover the lines that we ran for electric and gas. So once it's approved conditionally, what'll happen is the staff and I will work together to finalize the access and utility easement, which may be good as is, or they may have some tweaks to it. And then this plat can get recorded along with the easement, along with all the other things that we need to note on it. So it sounds a little more complicated than it is. It really is just an effort to restore these two addresses to what they were in 1904 or whatever, 1905, when they were built.
So just a point of clarification, likely utilities, so gas, electric, sewer, they typically require a 15-foot easement. So it'll likely, the easement will likely get larger.
Yeah, and again, it's two different issues. It's the easement that the utility companies may have.
Yeah.
It differs from the easement between the two property owners. The easement between the two property owners only needs to cover access to the lines and access to the alley.
Yep.
It doesn't have to conform with what the utility company's easement may be in order to do all of their maintenance and have all their access.
Generally, the sewer easement across a neighboring property would, it needs to be big enough for, excavator to get in there if they have to actually dig it up and fix the line. So that tends to range between 10 and 15 feet wide for that type of an easement.
Yeah, and again, I don't know whether this even overlaps with the sewer line. I can tell you for sure it overlaps with the gas and the electric because I was involved in the process, the permitted process of laying those. But I don't know about where the septic goes in and out.
Yeah, that'd be the advantage of getting a plat.
But again, I think that would be covered by the Salida easement for the sewer line. That wouldn't be covered between the two property owners.
Well, it would
Unless-
the easement would need to benefit one owner.
You're never
to be
gonna
able
have
to
the
access it.
line crossing over into red off of yellow, because the land that was removed from yellow was right behind it. If anything, it's gonna run through the honey people.
We don't know.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
So there's no, there won't be any, I
Is there
don't,
not an existing easement then from that neighboring property?
that I don't know. That would have been handled as part of the Welch, replat.
Wait till Commissioner.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We may come up with another question.
Okay.
Thank you. Is anybody here to speak to this? Public input time? Here to speak to this? Okay.
Just want to know what's going on.
Okay.
Anybody online?
Is there anybody online to speak to this?
We only have panelists and staff online.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move to discussion. Sounds like the sewer easement is perhaps the issue. Electrical seems to be taken care of. And then the plat, how we decide that is essentially clarified.
I mean, it seems to me there are two options that would work. One option is to continue this meeting until a plat has been received. A second option would be to potentially approve this conditionally, and the condition being that staff has received the appropriate plat and is convinced that the easements are all proper.
I agree with that.
Mr.
What it's
Chairman,
worth.
yeah, I would, let me just say that I think that what the applicant has presented in the remodeling and in the effort is phenomenal. Living in an old house myself, I think it's wonderful that someone takes the time and effort and energy and expense to restore these things to their prior glory. But my problem with it is that we are the deciding body in this matter. We are, this doesn't go to council. This doesn't typically go back to staff. We, in a plat amendments, which Mr. Khan has suggested are approved by administrative review. We're not administrative review. That's staff. If staff had wanted to do that, staff should have approved it by administrative review and asked for the plat. A new plat is required for any subdivision, and this is taking one lot and dividing it into two, which is subdividing the lot. So the code says that a plat is required to come before this body for a minor subdivision review, which is what we're doing. So to make exceptions for that just because we think it's a good proposal and we like the houses and, it's all of that, just isn't something I'm ready to do. I think that all of the things we're talking about that are gray areas would show up on a plat, on a new plat. And in good conscience, for me to approve this in any way, I would want this body to take a look at the plat with all the things we've been discussing. So personally, I would favor continuing this. I have no problem with the project. I just want to see the plat. I want to see what's on it. I want to see where the easements of all kinds are. I want to see the electrical. I want to see the sewer. And not something that's an old thing that by the applicant's own admission may have been done incorrectly. I want to see a new one with all of the right things that we're supposed to be looking at as a body. Otherwise, we're just tossing it back to staff, and why are we here? If they wanted to approve it with administrative approval, we shouldn't even be hearing this. So I think it's our responsibility as planning commissioners to do our job in the right way, to do a thorough job, and to have a plat to look at. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
I guess respectfully, this couldn't be approved administratively, right? Because it's a
Correct.
subdivision.
Yeah.
I guess I hear what you're saying, Francie, totally. Is there anything we're really going to object to here? I think there is a path that we could put conditional approval on this. And I hear you. We want to see the plat, like that's the way it should be done. I find discussing this another time is not frankly a great use of our time for something we all know that's going to happen, but it does rest on our trust with the staff. We're relying on staff to get those easements and say they're okay, and that we would be okay with that.
And at the end of the day, the planning commission would have approved it. So it's really on us. It's not really on staff. It's on us to look at that plat. It's what we're here for, to look at the plat that would be required with any minor subdivision. So to start making exceptions for minor subdivisions as they come before us, I think that sets a bad precedent.
I don't think this is I mean, we don't need to argue about this.
No, I'm not arguing, I'm
I
just,
think we're on the
yeah,
same team
yeah.
here. But,
Of course we are, yeah. It's just we have a difference of opinion
Yeah, I
on
get you.
where we fall on this.
Sure.
And, I guess I'm a rule follower. I like for everyone who comes before us with a minor subdivision to have the same rules apply.
So can I step in for just a moment? I don't mean to interrupt discussion, just point of clarification. And one, Francie, well articulated, and you're not wrong. Staff typically approves plats administratively for basically any other type of plat that's not a subdivision or isn't forced to come to planning. So we review condo plats or minor plat amendments, those things all the time. So typically that part of this approval is done by staff already and would be otherwise. So it's a little bit of a gray area of like, it is on this body to approve, but also staff usually, that's a done part that
Sure.
That we
city
get
of the
in front
code
of us,
entrusts
yeah.
to the staff to make sure it's done appropriately.
And I get that, and I trust staff. I just know that we're supposed to be looking at it. And when when this body gives our approval to something without all the information in hand, I'm uncomfortable with that.
Okay.
If I could jump in, Francie, I think that was really well said. I wouldn't really go and reiterate it all. I just wanted to, I feel very similarly, and personally, I'm pretty uncomfortable with the vagueness surrounding the sewer line. I mean, I think that, it's great property, and if all those easements are, like you said, I would agree. I have no problem approving it, but I am concerned about approving it and then finding out, we approved that sewer line's already running under another property where there might not be an existing easement. I'd like to make that more clear.
Okay. Anybody else? Thoughts? I think I see where you're coming from. There's three things that I kind of feel warrant just passing this back to staff. And one is, this was oversight on staff's part to begin with. So it's kind of on them to make that part right, which I'm sure they will. Two, it's C2. It's very permissive. There's not a whole lot we're looking at. And three, it's really just reestablishing a plat that already existed. I mean, it's a different plat, but it's essentially the same lines. It's not, and it's without construction as well. So it does matter. Actually, it's different in the code. It's different if construction is involved. So
It's still a subdivision.
I want to see, I think there obviously needs to be a condition that there's a new plat. The other thing that I think could be added to that is that the sewer line is located and put on that plat.
What was the second thing? The other thing? I just didn't hear you. The other thing that could be added to that?
It's C2.
It's C2, so it's
Oh.
very permissive as far as, there's not a whole lot we're looking at, especially if he's not doing any development, as far as coverages and setbacks and, there's not a whole lot. It's not a,
Yeah, there is none. The only requirement in C2 is height of the building.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my feelings.
No, I appreciate it. I'm still uncomfortable with it.
Okay, that's fine.
I guess my question at this point is, would the conditional approval versus essentially a rehearing, would the rehearing delay this process?
Only in the sense that the recording would happen later, you know.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when the next meeting following having all the information would take place. So, you know, no more than a month, right? But if the timing were right, it could be certainly less than that.
And since nothing is going to be done as a result of this, is that any harm to the applicant?
Would you like to address that, Mr.
Are
Khan?
you feeling harmed, Ben?
You know, the debate's kind of funny because it's academic in a way, because these buildings already exist and everything already exists. So if you were to not deny it, everything would just exist. And if you make it conditional or you make it, you know, continued, it's all going to exist the way it already is. So I think the point that nothing's really going to change is a valid one. I do think there's some kind of a lag that is involved with coordinating with the surveyor and making sure that the easement that we draft between the property owners lines up with the survey and all that. I think that's a little more efficient to do as a conditional approval in conjunction with staff, because we can just work together redlining the easement and the plat until it's appropriate, as opposed to bringing something that's finalized to you and then getting some additional comment or something. There's the timing really isn't a big issue to me personally. It doesn't really matter to me. It's not, there's no lending or other things that are, you know, related to this. And, you know, I'd rather have it be a conditional approval because I think it's a more efficient process, and I'll certainly honor the process and be completely transparent. And I'm definitely a rule follower.
Well, thank you for that.
But, you know, however you folks want to do it, I really just want to kind of, you know, put up the other address sign and go about my business. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bill, there are no other, if we go don't approve it until, you know, till we have another meeting with the appropriate plat, there are no other fees that would be incurred?
No. Okay. Just that for the preparation of the plat itself.
Which has to be done
applicant's side.
anyway.
And, yeah.
Correct. Right.
Yep.
Just maybe one other thing. I was hearing what you said, Francie, about, you know, this is our role, like we expect to have a fully complete plat. Just offering up another option of potentially approving conditionally, but also asking staff to bring it back to us and maybe not go through the whole approval process, but prove this is what the plat looks like. You know, we want to trust but verify, I guess is another way.
Well,
of
sure,
saying it.
but that doesn't really benefit anyone, because we still have to meet, we still have to look at the plat. And what if we have questions about the plat? So, I mean, I think it's better to continue it, have the plat in front of us. We don't have to go through the whole process. We've heard the applicant. Everyone who's here heard the applicant and certainly can vote on the continued measure. And we can actually see what we're voting on. Yeah, I take my role. I've been doing this, as Mr. Khan knows, for 8.5 years.
Okay,
and I
not to
take
interrupt,
this.
but everyone takes their role seriously.
I know,
here.
I know, but I'm just saying, and with all due respect, I didn't mean that as a slight to any of my fellow commissioners. It's just that personally, I have a problem not having a full packet. As Kenny said, I'm uncomfortable with that. I'd rather see it first and then approve it than pass it along to staff to do something else. And again, my apologies, Dan, I did not mean that as a slight. I know we all, we have an excellent commission here, and we all do a great job and are able to speak our piece with each other and, you know, in a friendly way and be good at the end of the day. So thank you for mentioning that.
I'm good.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Well, I will, and you know what it'll be, or you can.
Oh, I would make I don't know how to properly say this, I guess, but I would make a motion that this be continued until we have a plat, a final plat.
I think to our next regular meeting. I think
Yeah,
the
to
motion
Hannah,
has to be
Nina, just,
continued to a
make
date.
sure the motion has to have a
I think
date.
Nina's
if
trying
you're
to
continuing.
weigh in on the date certain piece. Go for it, Nina.
Yes, a specific date.
Okay.
And when would our next
And it
meeting
can
be?
always be continued again, but for notice purposes, so the applicant doesn't have to renotice this,
Right.
you just gotta keep it on a date.
24th of
February
February.
24th is the
Okay.
next meeting.
I make a motion this be continued until the 24th of February.
Oh, second?
Can I add to that? Can we reference the need for a plat to review?
You accept the friendly amendment?
Yes, I guess what you're saying.
That would be the point, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Just accept the friendly amendment.
yeah.
Kenny, I think Giff just was going to accept your friendly amendment to the motion.
Okay, sounds good. It's slightly choppy, sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion
A second.
and a second
Okay.
to continue until there is a proper plat, at which point we will see that.
Yeah,
On
specifically to February 24th.
February
Yep.
24th.
Yep.
Okay.
And if there's not that available at that time, then we'll
Continue it
do
again.
this again and continue it to the next date.
Okay.
I do have one question. Should the plat be available rather quickly, and we have a work session, would it be possible, maybe this is a question for Nina, would it be possible then, is it on that date or on or before that date?
We have
Or-
to specify the
Specify,
date.
so it couldn't be moved forward?
Correct.
If-
Yeah, because the
okay.
idea is it's notice to like the residents and all the other types of notices, so you could do it after that date, but not before.
Okay, thank
So
you.
You could always say a closer date and then just keep continuing it, but in order for it not to be renoticed, it has to appear on that day, not before, because then there wouldn't be proper notice for, let's just say, I know no one came today, but any property owners or anyone listening to this on YouTube, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Our
thank you.
Next regular meeting is set for February 24th.
Got it.
Okay. All right, I think we're there.
Point of order, have we decided which alternate will be voting?
The current motion is to continue it to February 24th with the condition of having.
No,
a
no,
prepared
it's
plat.
not.
we were saying, and we should have, I
We
should have done
would have
that.
would need to have done that at the beginning
Yeah.
of the hearing.
So
I think
neither-
we're good.
At
And
this-
if we have to go back, if we have a tie, then we can go back, correct? And
Are they
a point.
voting
That'd be
or
a
not?
point for
No.
Nina.
No, okay,
Yeah,
just commissioners,
okay.
just commissioners at this point. Yep,
yes. Okay,
regular meter.
Okay, ready to vote?
Yep.
we're ready.
Fillet,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes,
Derwingson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes,
Layton,
Yes.
Riggs.
Oh,
No, no.
that's alternate, so.
that's it.
Alternates, motion passes. Okay,
Mr. Khan, thank you for your cooperation and willingness to oblige us this detail.
Not a fire drill, maybe.
Thank you,
Whatever you guys need, it's not a problem.
thank you.
All right, thank you. All right.
Good.
Updates.
Yeah, we're gonna diverge just a little bit. We're gonna give you some bit of updates on a issue that's come up of sort of statewide importance that could potentially impact us here. It's not technically a work session. It really is more of an update. I'm gonna pass it over to Kristen, and I want to also note that Kristen has officially taken the position that Catherine Dunleavy formerly had as our land use and housing planner. And so she is diving into all things housing
Yay.
quite deeply these days.
Congratulations,
she'll have-
Kristen.
She'll have a little bit more information. I'll also note that this will be John's final planning commission meeting with us, and I'll let him
You just going down the road?
tell him what you're doing.
I am. I am now the new head town planner of Poncha Springs.
Congratulations.
So
They play in Ponchas.
Kristen will have to take this agenda item on the 24th, and any plat issues will be short-lived by me in the city of Salida, so.
Thank you, John. Thanks for your
John.
service to the
Best of
community.
luck. Best of luck.
Best of luck.
Hopefully you're not fighting about our sewer line for,
Yeah, sewer lines, oh my
We should
God.
find out here very soon.
oh, are they?
They're meeting right now to discuss things.
Right,
Luckily, only have to just, operate in the wake of whatever that is, so.
right, good.
So that, we do have a planning technician position that is open at this point. That's being flown currently, and hopefully we can get somebody in there to replace John, hopefully by the end of February.
That'd be
if
great.
not sooner. So. Kristen, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, everybody. So we just kind of wanted to provide a staff update, give a little bit of background on some recent House bills that were passed last year and the implementation of them that could potentially affect Salida. So we just kind of wanted to get this on your radar. We don't have to make any decisions about it tonight. Just kind of giving an overview of the House bill itself and what it could potentially mean for us. So as an overview, this was House Bill 24-1152. This applies to municipalities with more than 1,000 residents that are an MPO. We are not an MPO, so our participation in the requirements of this bill would be optional. One of the reasons that we would want to consider opting into this bill is because DOLA is going to introduce a grant program to help builders, residents, developers to get ADUs built. And one of the reasons we kind of want to have this considered for our jurisdiction is because we're already quite close to meeting the requirements. So it would only mean a few modifications for us, and we'll go over those tonight.
Excuse me, Kristen, when we're done, would it be possible to get copies of the slides sent to us by email?
Of course.
Thank you.
So just a quick overview of the DOLA grant program. I'll preface this by saying that DOLA has not fully released too much information about their program yet. And for the record, DOLA means Department of Local Affairs. So we work with them closely on a lot of our housing code implementation items. So the first thing that they're kind of thinking is that there could be ADU fee reductions or otherwise encouragement programs for pre-approved plans, technical assistance, or reducing fees. Part of the House bill also restricts some like large impact fees and other things that would make it more difficult to build ADUs. That's prohibited by part of the bill, but we don't have too many large fees like that. Right now, we do charge a $200 administrative fee for an ADU, but that is going to be revised as part of the code update. Is that correct, Bill?
Yeah, we're gonna probably just end up making it a straight building permit and getting rid of the administrative review portion of that.
Thanks, Bill. Other funding could potentially come through CHAFA. So DOLA is hoping to release a little bit more information on that early this year. And so kind of in advance of that, we wanted to put this on your radar to think about how that could affect us. If we did want to opt in, we would need to submit updates to our code and implement it by June 30th. So as we are reviewing the code and pushing some of our code updates, this is just kind of something for us to keep in mind. Here's a brief overview of some of the House bill requirements. You can see items 1 through 4. We already meet these things, such as you must allow 1 ADU per single-family dwelling unit, SFD on this site, on this slide. We can't require owner occupancy, which means it's allowed to be rented. The owner doesn't have to be the one to occupy their ADU. We already talked about the administrative approval processes, and any future plan developments would not be able to restrict ADUs.
And I'll just quickly note on that one with the HOAs, not 100% sure, but I believe this House bill does prevent HOAs from preventing their residents from building ADUs or occupying them. And I do know of at least one HOA in town that does prohibit people from living long-term in the ADUs, even though ADUs are allowed to be built. And so
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how that impacts.
So that would override the HOA requirements and allow them to rent them?
That is my guess, but we need to get some confirmation on that.
Okay.
I mean, could they be potentially grandparented in?
Not sure. The previous PDs, apparently, this will not apply to, only future PDs. So we do need to get some clarification on that.
I think it's my understanding too, as at the same time that DOLA is going to start releasing some more information on their grant program, they're also going to be releasing some interpretation of the code. So I think that should and hopefully be a part of that, the HOA specifically. So the two kind of sticking points that we currently have with our code, this is true for our current code and also for our code update, are specifically about parking and setbacks. So the House bill says that you cannot require parking for an ADU, whereas right now our code currently does require 1 parking space per ADU. And then the ADU setbacks cannot be more restrictive than those for the single-family dwelling unit in the zone district. Whereas right now, we do have some implementation for bulk control. And we'll go into these two a little bit more. So specifically on the parking of ADUs, there's a nothing prevents portion of the bill, which does allow jurisdictions to require an off-street parking if there is already space on site for it. At the time of construction. This could mean something like the area of the, like behind the single family dwelling has space for 2, like a carport for 2 cars, or just a paved parking area that could fit 2 cars. We would then be allowed to require one of those to be used for the ADU. Similarly, number 2 here, if there is not sufficient space on site, parking is required for the single-family dwelling, which is required for us everywhere. And the block prohibits on-street parking, then we could allow them to require a space on site.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be an interesting part,
We worked so hard
the
on
parking
that.
specifically. Yeah.
So my question is from your perspective, is the primary driver of opting into the eligibility under this House bill to be eligible for the DOLA grant program? Like,
Yes.
is it but for the grant opportunities, we would not consider changing these 2 provisions?
That's correct.
Right.
So it sounds like learning more about the grant is a pretty critical piece
Certainly,
of information
yes.
if that's the primary driver.
And then probably the one that we'll see a little bit more heartbreak with is the ADU setback language. So opting into the bill means that we would not be able to have some of the dimensional standards which we currently require by code. Similar to the last one, this is not supposed to change with our code update, so this is intended to stay in place as long as we unless we decide to do this opt-in. So currently I have the sections here pulled up, and this has always been a kind of interesting graphic for the public and staff to understand alike. So right now, just as a point of clarification, most of our R2 setbacks for the primary dwelling units are 5 feet. So the 3 feet and the 5 feet both work, but the 10-foot setback, which we have implemented primarily to reduce bulk in people's backyards and private spaces, we would not be allowed to maintain this at the 10-foot. So
Kristen, so the language of the bill says we can't require that, but does that also mean that we can't encourage people to do that in some way? Have some kind of carrot for that? So that we don't have
There
to
could be-
totally throw out all of the work we've done to try to protect backyards and neighborhoods?
yeah, I think there could be some sort of incentives we could
Right.
consider.
Yeah.
One of the other things I was mentioning to Bill today is that the House bill also does not say anything about bulk. It specifically says setbacks. So I wonder if there's other creative ways for us to achieve similar heights at distances in a way where we're using verbiage of bulk rather than
Right.
setbacks
Good point.
specifically in the code. So I think that could be further studied.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's mostly it. We just kind of wanted to get this on your radar, and we're happy to answer any questions now or that come up kind of as we learn more. But we will want to consider this more closely in the May-June realm because we'll need to know by June 30th.
So that's when the application was due
That's when our code needs to be written in such a way.
in such a way?
I think there's an extension that will be allowed. So I think if we write it into the code by the deadline, and then the code is adopted at a later date, there could potentially be.
So the application's not a big deal. You can get that done. I was just thinking, how much time do you need to get an application in? So.
We probably need to have some progress on the code text amendment, and by May, I would assume, so that, because it, of course, would have to go through planning commission and then on to council. I'm not sure exactly how much, does it need to be adopted? Does it need to
We might be
be
running
in
out
the
of road
process?
on that
You mentioned
anyway,
extension, we'd have to make some progress by that point on this item for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
as Kristen pointed out, those are the two big changes that would
Right.
need to happen.
Do you know how the program was funded?
I don't know.
But it's Prop 123.
For how?
I can't recall where this one came
Or
out
how?
of.
Because a lot of funding is in turmoil right now.
I don't think it's
Right.
part of the IRA.
I think it's Prop 123 potentially. That's the big housing proposition that passed statewide.
But Aaron, are you referring to the budget
I don't
shortfall?
recall that from the text.
Budget shortfall, the federal funding executive orders.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, most of the federal funding stuff was regarding Inflation Reduction Act,
Yeah.
which was more infrastructure and green energy projects, things like that, not local housing development. But we don't know.
But I guess
Right.
be
Looking
that as
through
it
quick.
may, this would ostensibly longer term, right? It'll outlast the current 4-year administration and But
Yeah.
overall, this, I don't know what the grants, it says it right here, but presumably this was an effort to densify and that kind of thing, which I think is a goal of our city, more housing, whether that's density or otherwise.
Yeah, we talk a
Financing
lot.
too, if you wanted to.
We talk a lot about naturally occurring affordable housing too, and how ADUs are currently kind of fitting that role.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is kind of in an effort to continue that.
That's definitely what this is, yeah.
Yeah, I think this represents a tension that just plays out in so many sort of higher cost rural areas, which is the desire to increase supply, which often means increasing density, and also maintaining the quality of life where you don't have crowded
Right.
backyards,
Right.
and that's always going to be a
Yeah, it's
tension
such a
no matter
balance,
what.
right.
Maintaining the kind of rural quality of life and also wanting to increase supply for affordability. That's just
Yeah.
something we're going to have to navigate.
Yeah, I agree.
All right,
I have a
thank you.
question.
Try to stay on top of it and provide you as much
I think
information as
Kenny
we can.
might have had a question.
Kenny?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Sort of.
Yeah, a little bit
Muffled.
muffled, if you could speak up as much as possible.
Okay, sorry about that. I guess I'm confused on the 25, why is the 25-foot height limit stay in place, but the 22-foot height limit gets restricted? Because my understanding is like for a typical house, we have a 35-foot max height, is that correct?
For accessory buildings, the max height is 25 feet.
25 foot for an ADU.
Yeah,
Oh, I gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
So it's actually more permissive for an ADU than for a primary dwelling up until 12 feet. You know, if it's a single level building, only 12 feet high, you can be as close as 3 feet on the side.
Right.
Anything
Actually,
over that,
gotcha.
though, then just
Yeah.
starts kicking into what the primary setback is, with that exception of between 5 and 10.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. So we'll keep you posted, though, on what we learn on this. Hopefully bring something back next time, and that will help maybe determine whether or not folks are interested in moving that direction or not. So, other than that, I think that's all we got
Do
for
we
update.
have a work session on the 11th of February? Do you think?
At this moment, no.
Okay,
But we do have the joint work session
right,
on February 3rd,
right.
correct? Is that the
Yes.
right date? Yeah, February 3rd.
February
So-
3rd.
Bill, on that subject, I mean, in reading the new code, there is, and I don't know, can't remember the old code, there is nothing about those joint work sessions in the process.
Huh, interesting.
I mean, there's in the section that you just handed out for tomorrow night,
Yeah.
there's the 6-step process. There's the preliminary hearing and blah, blah. Nowhere does that joint work session, and frankly, they're so vague and loosey-goosey that I find it a waste of everyone's time.
Loosey-goosey, technical terms, right.
I think part of that is because, number one, with subdivisions, the plan is to go to the preliminary plat process and then to the final plat process. So that preliminary plat gives you really more of that assurance that, yeah, this is going to make sense, this is going to go forward. And now I can invest my money as a developer into the civil engineering aspect of it, right? And that takes up a large chunk of the development applications that tend to go to both Planning Commission and Council. And then also with the shifting of the threshold of the applications, where some of the things that currently are approved at council level would be approved at the Planning Commission level. It takes council out of the picture.
Right.
Now, still, with anything where there's still dedications, right-of-way dedications, open space dedications, that still needs to be approved by council. But ultimately, it puts a little bit more of the decision-making onus on this body.
But if we want to keep that step in, it ought to be referenced in the code. I mean, I'm a developer, and I think I'm following the rules, and you're going to raise your hand and say, wait a minute, you forgot you got to do this. And they're going to say, where does it say I have to do that?
This is a good thing to bring up tomorrow night when we discuss the administration and procedures. So if we feel like it's worth keeping, mention it. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have.
fun stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do have that, hopefully, we're hoping that's the last, say, preliminary meeting with the Land Use Advisory Committee tomorrow night to finish going over the rest of the draft code, and then incorporate the vast majority of the changes that have been discussed into a draft that by no means is final, but could technically go out to the public while the committee is still also reviewing and responding to it, so that we can keep moving things
Right.
forward.
Right.
Yeah. So we're hoping to get out in front of the public with an open house sometime at the end of February at this
That
point.
would be great.
All right, if there's no
I have-
unfinished business or new business,
Nope.
No,
Okay,
oh,
then
sorry.
we have a comment, we have a request for a comment from
Well, you'll like it.
Palmer.
I just want to say I went to the 3rd and M open house this afternoon. And it's also available tomorrow. What is it, from 3
to
to
6.
5 or 6?
3 to 6, I think.
To walk through. They're doing it really rushed and quick because the homes are already spoken for. The one gal and her grandson have already almost moved into the one unit. So there are, correct me if I'm wrong, but the little one on the corner is for sale for 208, I think 205, 80% AMI with 99% financing with USDA, right? And then the one.
It's an ADA unit.
Pardon me?
That's an ADA unit.
Yes, it's an ADA, and they even have, everything's ADA, a pull-out island. So somebody with a wheelchair can go, pull out the island and work on the island. And then there's two that are, the one that has an ADU on the bottom and a single-family main unit on the top will be rented. And then the others will be sold for, I think he said 218 and 221 or something like that. Don't quote me on the prices, but the for sales are all 80% AMI or less for the applicants, and the rentals are 100% AMI or less. So, and I have to say, I know Greg, you're on that board, so I'm kind of tooting your horn here, but they were really nice. That, you know, they were solid. The materials that they were used, the way that they were designed. They all have the storage lockers in back, which we discussed when we first talked about that development. So everybody has a little closet back there to put their stuff in. They have parking on site. So hats off to the Chafee Housing Trust and their work. It takes a while, but boy, I tell you, it's really good to see it come to fruition. So go tomorrow if you can.
Neat.
And see it. Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I have it on the
Oh, do you already
digital
have it?
version.
Okay.
Yeah. I have it digitally.
Digitally, yeah. Well, I picked that up just so I wouldn't forget to talk about it.